In a quiet Georgia neighborhood where magnolia blossoms brushed the edges of cracked sidewalks and porch swings whispered the weight of time, stood a modest home on the corner of Willow Street. It wasn't the kind of house that graced magazines or attracted gawkers. The paint had faded, the porch steps groaned, and the roof bore more memories than shingles. But inside lived a warmth that couldn't be bought or built, a soul that radiated from the woman known simply as Miss Thelma. Miss Thelma was 72, though she'd deny it with a sly smile. Her hands were worn, knuckles swelled slightly with age, but they moved with purpose, especially in the kitchen where the scent of cornbread and gumbo seemed a permanent fixture. Neighbors called her the porch angel. Kids said she made the best sweet tea in 3 counties. She lived alone, her children long grown and scattered, her husband buried beneath a tree in the churchyard where wild violets grew. But Thelma was never lonely. Her door remained unlocked, her table often set for more than one, and her heart perpetually open. One rainy evening, as dusk smeared lavender streaks across the sky, a knock came. Not the bold rap of a neighbor borrowing sugar, but a timid whisper of trouble. She paused, wiping her hands on her apron, and opened the door to find a boy no more than 10, shivering in a thin t-shirt and jeans that clung to him like wet paper. His left eye was swollen, lip split, and there was a quiet terror in the way he looked past her, as if expecting someone worse to come. He didn't beg, didn't explain. He just said, "Please, don't make me go back." And Thelma, with the instinct of someone who'd lived long enough to trust her heart, reached out and pulled him into the glow of her kitchen. She gave him soup, wrapped him in an old quilt, and sat silently beside him until he slept. Then, with steady hands, she dialed the number for the local police, requesting not a squad car, but someone gentle. By morning, the caseworker had come. Her name was Ms. Caroline, and she listened as Thelma spoke of bruises that told stories without words. She saw the fear in the boy's eyes and noted how his body leaned toward Thelma without thinking. When asked if the boy could stay a few nights while they sorted things, Thelma didn't hesitate. "He's already got a room," she said, guiding them to the small space with sun-yellow walls and a quilt that smelled of lavender soap. His name was Marcus. He spoke little, but he listened well. Over days that turned to weeks, Thelma taught him how to make peach cobbler and how to fold towels just so. He learned to read weather by wind, to pray before eating, and to trust silence. He flinched less, smiled more. And when the time came to place him in foster care, Marcus packed quietly, but his hand shook as he zipped the bag. Thelma hugged him tight, slipping a small notebook into his pack. Inside the cover, in her looping script, she'd written, "You are worthy. You are loved. You are never alone." Years passed. Marcus moved homes, changed schools. He kept to himself, studied hard, and read Thelma's words every night. Her message anchored him through middle school taunts, through high school trials, through law school lectures. He rose not just because of grades, but because he carried a legacy stitched from kindness. And Thelma? She aged, slow but sure. Her steps slowed, her eyes dimmed, but she never stopped cooking, never stopped listening. Children still stopped by for cookies. Teenagers still sat on her porch to ask about life. She told stories, hummed hymns, and kept the spare room clean. One spring morning, a thick envelope arrived. Thelma opened it with care. Inside, a letter on official letterhead from the United States District Court. It read, "Dearest Miss Thelma, tomorrow I will be sworn in as a federal judge. Cameras will roll, officials will speak. But before that, I wanted you to know none of this would have been possible without the night you opened your door. You fed me when I was starved for more than food. You saw me when I didn't want to be seen. You named me when I didn't know who I was. When they ask who built me, I will say your name. With eternal love, your son, Marcus." Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. She didn't need an audience. She didn't need applause. Her heart, full and certain, whispered prayers of thanks. Later that day, her neighbor's grandson, Caleb, set up a laptop and showed her the live stream. She watched as Marcus, tall and confident, in his black robe, spoke her name to the nation. Told them about the gumbo, the quilt, the words. And days later, when a sleek sedan pulled into her drive and he stepped out, no longer the boy she fed, but the man she raised, she opened the door before he knocked. "I'm home," he said, arms wrapping her like a sun coming in from the cold. "Not to visit, to stay. If you'll have me." She smiled, her voice as soft as the cornbread cooling behind her. "Took you long enough, baby?" And in that house at the end of Willow Street, something sacred came full circle. Not just a homecoming, but a declaration that love, freely given, returns tenfold. That a single act of mercy can birth a legacy. That sometimes the greatest families are the ones we choose. Marcus stayed. Not just in name, but in purpose. He converted the old shed behind the house into a home office. From there, he read court transcripts, wrote opinions, and mentored law students from disadvantaged backgrounds. He told every single one of them, no matter how broken they felt, someone believes in you. Just like someone believed in me. Together, he and Thelma began a foundation, the Porch Angel Project. They funded scholarships, created after-school reading programs, and stocked food pantries. They partnered with social workers, offering transitional housing for children in crisis. And every child who walked through the front door of Thelma's house got more than shelter. They got a new story. Thelma never asked for thanks. She measured success in full bellies, steady eyes, and shoulders that no longer sagged under the weight of fear. Marcus called her mom, introduced her that way in interviews, wrote about her in journals, and quoted her during court rulings. She became a quiet legend, the backbone of a movement she never intended to start. One night, years later, Thelma sat on her porch swing, wrapped in her favorite quilt, Marcus sitting beside her with 2 mugs of tea. The stars blinked down through the thick Georgia air. "I think about that night sometimes," he said. "How different my life would be if you'd closed that door." She reached over, patted his knee, her touch still strong despite the tremble in her fingers. "Doors aren't meant to keep people out, Marcus. They're meant to let grace in." And in the hush of that moment, with the crickets singing and the night holding its breath, the legacy of one woman's kindness continued to ripple through Tamia, quiet, powerful testament to the truth that love, even in small doses, changes everything. In a quiet Georgia neighborhood where magnolia blossoms brushed the edges of cracked sidewalks and porch swings whispered the weight of time, stood a modest home on the corner of Willow Street. It wasn't the kind of house that graced magazines or attracted gawkers. The paint had faded, the porch steps groaned, and the roof bore more memories than shingles. But inside lived a warmth that couldn't be bought, or built a soul that radiated from the woman known simply as Miss Thelma. Miss Thelma was 72, though she'd deny it with a sly smile. Her hands were worn, knuckles swelled slightly with age, but they moved with purpose, especially in the kitchen where the scent of cornbread and gumbo seemed a permanent fixture. Neighbors called her the Porch Angel. Kids said she made the best sweet tea in 3 counties. She lived alone, her children long grown and scattered, her husband buried beneath a tree in the churchyard where wild violets grew. But Thelma was never lonely. Her door remained unlocked, her table often set for more than one, and her heart perpetually open. One rainy evening, as dusk smeared lavender streaks across the sky, a knock came. Not the